the economic machine works. 문 닫으면 내가 덮지 않을까?
방해할게요.
안 방해해. The economy works like a simple machine, but many people don't understand it or they don't agree on how it works. And this has led to a lot of needless economic suffering. I feel a deep sense of responsibility to share my simple but practical economic template. Though it's unconventional, it has helped me to anticipate and to sidestep for global financial crisis. And it has worked well for me for over 30 years. Let's begin. Though the economy might seem complex, it works in a simple, mechanical way. It's made up of a few simple parts and a lot of simple transactions that are repeated over and over again zillion times. These transactions are above all else driven by human nature, and they created three main processes that drive the economy. Number 1, productive growth. Number 2, the short-term debit cycle. Number 3, the long-term debit cycle. Well, look at these three processes and how laying them on top of each other creates a good template for tracking economy movements and figuring out what's happening now. Let's start with the simplest part of the economy, transactions. So why is credit so important? Because when a borrower receives credit, he is able to increase the spending. And remember, spending drives the economy. This is because one person's spending is another person's income. Think about it. Every dollar you spend, someone else earns, and every dollar you earn, someone else has spent. So when you spend more, someone else earns more. When someone's income less, it makes lenders more willing to lend him money because now he's more worthy of credit. A credit worth borrower has to think the ability to repay and collateral. Having a lot of income in relation to its debit gives him the ability to repay. In the event that he can't repay, he has valuable assets to use a collector that can be sold. This makes lenders feel comfortable. This makes lenders feel comfortable lending him money. This makes lenders feel comfortable lending him money. So, increased income allow increased borrowing, which allows increased spending. And since person's spending is another person's income, this leads to more increased borrowing and borrowing and so on. But this reinforcing pattern leads to economic growth and is why we have suckers. In the transaction, you have to give something in order to get something, and how much you get depends on how much you produce. Over time, you learn that and that accumulated knowledge bases or living standards. We call this productivity growth. Those who are innovative and hardworking raise their productivity and their living standards faster than those who are complacent and lazy. But that isn't necessarily true over the short run. Productivity matters most in the long run, but credit matters most in the short run. Okay, this is because productivity growth doesn't fluctuate much. So it's not a big driver of economic swings. That is because it's always used to consume more than we produce when we acquire it. And it processes to consume less than we produce when we have to pay it back. Debit swings occur in two big cycles. On takes about 5 and 7 years, and on other takes about 75 and 100 years. Yeah. While most people feel the swings, they typically don't see them as cycles because they see them too up close day by day, week by week. Close day by day, week by week, week by week. In this chapter, we are going to step by step look at those three big processes and how they interact to make up our experiences. As mentioned, the swings around the line are not due to how much innovation or hard work there is. They're primarily due to how much credit there is. Let's for a second imagine an economy without credit. In this economy, the only way I can increase my spending is increase my income, which requires me to be more productive and more work. Increase the productivity is the only way for growth. Since my spending is another person's income, the economic grows every time I or anyone else is more productive. If we follow the transactions and play this out, we see a progression like the productivity growth line. But because we borrow, we should have cycles. This isn't due to any laws or regulations. It's due to human nature and the way the credit works. Think of borrowing as simply a way of pulling spending forward. To do this, you essentially need to borrow from your future self. In doing so, you created a time in the future that you need to spend less than you make in order to pay it back. It very quickly resembles a circle. Basically, and anytime you borrow, you create a circle. This is as This is as true for an individual as it is for the economy. This is why understanding credit is so important because it sets into motion predictable series of events that will happen in the future. This makes credit different from money. Money is what you settle a transaction with. When you buy a beer from a bartender with cash, the transaction is settled immediately. But when you buy a beer with credit, it's like starting a burn tab. You're saying you promise to pay in the future. Together you and the bartend credit and asset and liability. You just credit you just credit created credit out of them air. You just create. You just create credit out of them out of thin air. It's not until you pay the bar tab later that the asset and the liability disappear. The debit goes away and the transaction is settled. The reality is that most of what people call money actually credit. The total amount of credit in the United States is about $50 trillion. $50 trillion. $50 trillion. Wow. I want $50 trillion. And the total amount of money is only about $3 trillion. Trillion dollars. Remember, in an economy without credit, the only way to increase your spending is to produce more. But in an economy with credit, you can also increase your spending by borrowing. As a result, an economy with credit has more spending and allows incomes to rise faster than productivity over the short run, but not over the long run. Now, don't get me wrong. Credit is necessarily something bad that just causes suckers. It's better when it finances our consumption that can't be paid back. However, it's good when impatiently allocated resources and produce the income so you can pay back the debit. For example, if you're borrowing money to buy a big TV, if it doesn't generate income to pay back the debit, but if you're borrowing money to buy a tractor, and the tractor as you have harvest more crop and earn more money, then you can pay back. You can pay back your debit and improve your living standards. In an economy with credit, we can follow the transactions and see how credit create growth. Let me give you an example. Suppose you can $1,000 on your own year. Have not debit. Your credit worthy enough to borrow. Say on a credit card. So you can spend $100,000 even though you only earn $1,000. Since your spending is another person's income, someone is earning $1,010. The person earning $1,010 with no debit can borrow $1,010. So he can spend $121,000 even though he has only earned $30,000. His spending is another person's income. And by following the transactions, we can begin to see how this process works in a self-reinforcing pattern. Reinforcing pattern. But remember, borrowing creates circle. Borrowing creates circle. Creates circle. Borrowing created circle. And if the circle goes up, it eventually needs to come down. This leads into the short-time debit circle. Debit circle. As economic activity increases, we see an expansion. The precipice of the short-term debit circle. Spending continues to increase and prices start to rise. This happens because the increases in spending is flooded by credit, which can be credit instantly out of thin air. When the amount of spending and incomes grow faster than the production of goods, prices rise. When prices rise, we call this inflation. The central bank doesn't want too much inflation because it causes problems. Zinc price rise in less interest rates. With higher interest rate, fewer people can afford to borrow money, and the cost of existing debt rise. Think about this as the monthly payments on your credit card going up. Because people borrow less and have higher debt repayments, they have less money left over to spend. So spending slows. And since one person's spending is another person's income dropped, and so on and so forth. When people spend less, prices go down. We call this deflation. Economic activity decreases, and we have a recession. If the recession becomes severe and inflation is no longer a problem, the central bank will lower interest rates to cause everything to pick up again. With low interest rates, debt repayment are reduced and borrowing and spending pick up. And we see another expansion. As you can see, the economy works like a machine. In the short term, debit circle spending is constrained only by the willingness of lenders and borrowers to provide and receive credit. When credit is easily available, there's an economic expansion. When credit is easily available, there's a recession. And note that this cycle is controlled primarily by the central bank. The short-term debit cycle typical is 5 to 8 years and happens over and over again for decades. But notice that the bottom and top of each cycle finish with more growth in the previous cycle and with more debit. Why? Because people proceed. They have an inclination to borrow and spend more instead of paying back debt. It's human nature. Because of this wrong for this over time, debt rises faster than incomes, created the long-term debit cycle. Debits people becoming more indebted renders even more favorably extend credit. Why? Why? Because everyone thinks these things are going great. People are just focused on that's been happening lately. And what's been happening lately? Income have been rising. Asset values are growing up. The stock market loss. It's a boom. It pays to buy good. It pays to buy good service and financial asset with borrowed money. When people when people do a lot of that, we call it a bubble. So even though debit have been growing, incomes have been growing nearly faster than them. Let's call the ratio of debit in income the debit burden. So long as incomes continue to rise, the debit burden stays manageable. So long as incomes continue to rise, the debit burden stays manageable. At the same time, asset value is sold. People borrow huge amount of money to buy asset as investment, causing their price to rise every year. People feel worthy. So, even in the accumulation of lot of debt. Rising incomes and asset value help borrowers remain creditworthy for a long time. But this usually cannot continue forever and it doesn't. Over decades, this debit burdens slowly increased, creating longer and larger debt repayments. At some point, debt repayments start growing faster than incomes, forcing people to cut back on their spending. And since one person's spending is another person's income, incomes begin to go down, which makes people less credit worthy, causing borrowing to go down. Debt repayment continue to rise, which makes spending drop even further. And the cycle reverses itself. This is the long-term debit thing. Debit burdens have simply become too big. For the United States, Europe, Europe, and much of the rest of the world, this happened in 2008. It happened for the same reason. It happened in Japan in 1998 and in the United States back in 1929. And now the economy begins deliberating. In the deliberating, people can spend, incomes pay, credit disappears. Asset prices drop, banks get squeezed. The stock market crisis, social tension rise, and while things started to feed on itself the other way. As incomes fail and debt payments rise, borrowers get squeezed. No longer credit worthy. Credit drives up and borrowers and no longer borrow enough money to make their debit repayment. Scrambling to fill this void, borrowers are proceed to sell assets. Assist prices drop. The value of the collateral borrowers can put up price. This markets borrowers even less credit worth. People pay for credit is rapidly disappear. Less spending, less become uh, spending less, income less, wealth less, credit less, borrowing, and so on. It's a virus cycle. It's a virus cycle. This appears similar to a recession, but the difference here is that interest rate can't be lower to save the debt. In a recession, lowering interest rates work to stimulate borrowing. However, in a lowering interest rates doesn't work because interest rates are already low and soon hit 0%. So, the stimulation ends. Interest rates in the United States hit 0% during the deleveraging of the 1930 and again to 2008. The difference between a recession and deleveraging is deleveraging. Borrowers' debit burdens have simply gotten too big and can't be relieved by lowering the interest rate. Lenders realize that debt have become too large to ever be fully paid back. Borrowers have lost their ability to repay and their cultural has lost the battle. They feel crippled by the debt. They don't even want more. Lenders stop lending, borrowers stop borrowing. Think of the economy as being not creditworthy, just like an individual. So, what do you do about deleveraging? To prolong it, debit the burdens are too high and they must come down. There are 4 ways this can happen. 1. People, business, and governments cut their spending. 2. Debits are reduced through deposits and restructurings. 3. Rest and redistribute from the haves to have-nots. And finally, 4. The central bank prints new money. These 4 ways have happened in every deleveraging in the modern history. Usually spending is cut first. As we just saw, people, business, and even governments tight their belts and cut their spending so that they can pay down their debt. This is often referred to as austerity. When borrowers stop taking on new debt and start paying down old debt, you might expect the debt burden to decrease. But the opposite happens. Because spending is cut. And a man's spending is another man's income. It costs incomes to pay. They fare faster than debit are repaid and the debit burden actually gets worse. As we've seen, this cut in spending is deflationary and painful. Businesses are forced to cut costs, which means less jobs and higher unemployment. This leads to the next step. Debt must be reduced. Money borrowers find themselves unable to repay their loans and borrows debit and leaders render assets. When a borrower starts to repay, The bank people get nervous that the bank won't be able to repay them. So they decide to withdraw their money from the bank. Banks, bank get, banks get squeezed and people business and banks depend on their debt. This severe economic contraction is the depression. A big part of the depression is people discovering much of what they thought was there, what is really there. Let's go back to the bar. When you bought a beer and put in a bartender, you promise to repay the bartender. You promise to become an asset of bartender. But if you break your promise, if you don't pay him back, you essentially be paid on your bar tab. Then the asset he says is really worth only anything. It has basically disappeared. Money lenders don't want out their assets to disappear and agree to debt restructuring. Many lenders don't want their assets to disappear and agree to debt restructuring. Debt restructuring means the lenders get paid back less or get paid back over a longer time frame or at a lower interest rate than was first agreed. Somehow a contract is broken in a way that reduces debt. Lenders would rather have a little of something than all of nothing. Even though debt disappears, debt restructuring costs income and asset value to disappear faster. So the debt burden continues to get worse, like counting spending. Debt reduction is also painful and deflationary. All of this impacts the central government because lower incomes and less employment means the government collects payroll tax. At the same time, it needs to increase its spending because employment has risen. Many of the employed that indicate saving and need financial support from the government. Additionally, government credit statements plans and increase their spending to make up for the crisis in the economy. Governments did that depiction exploit in the deliberating because they spend more than they earn in tax. This is what's happening when you hear about the border defect on the news. To fund their defects is government tax. Government need to either raise tax or borrow money. All of this impacts the central government because lower incomes and less employment means the government collects pure taxes. At the same time, it needs to increase its spending because unemployment has risen. Many of the unemployed 정신없어.
물이 있었네. 물 갖다 주네.
Having 27 need financial support from the government. Additionally, government credits stimulus plans and increase their spending to make up for the decreases in their economy. Government does that deficit influence in the deliberating because they spend more than they earn in tax. This is what's happening. This is what's happening when you hear about the budget is depicted on the news. To fund their deficits, government needed to either raise taxes or borrow money. But with comes following and some money unemployed, who is the money going to come from? With incomes falling and so many unemployed, who is the money going to come from? The leads. Since government need more money and since work is heavily concentrated in the hands of a small percentage of the people, governments naturally rise tax on the wealthy, which facilitates redistribution of wealth in the economy from the have-nots. But have-nots who are suffering begin to resent a wealthy have. The wealthy have been squeezed by the weak economy. falling asset prices and higher tax begin to resent the have-nots. If the depression continues, social disorder then can break out. Not only the tensions rise within countries, they can rise between countries, especially better, incredible countries. This situation can lead to political change that can sometimes be extreme. In the 1930s, this led to higher coming to power war in Europe and depression in the United States. The pressures to do something to end the depression increases. Remember, most of what people do was money was actually credit. So, when credit depression disappears, people don't have enough money. People are desperate to money. And you remember who can print money? And central bank can. Having already lost its interest rates to near zero, it's forced to print money. Unlike corresponding double direction and word, distribution, printing money is inflationary and stimulus. Invisible, the central bank prints new money out of thin air and use it to buy financial assets and government bonds. It happened in the United States during the Great Depression and again in 2020. Okay. When the United States Central Bank, the Federal Reserve, printed up over $2 trillion. I want $1 trillion. Other central banks around the world that could have printed a lot of money too. By buying financial receipts with this money, it helps drive offset prices, which makes people more creditworthy. However, this only helps those who own financial assets. You see, the central bank can print money, but it can only brought by financial assets. The central government, on the other hand, can buy goods and services and put money in the hands of the people, but it can't print money. So, in order to stimulate the economy, the two must cooperate. By buying government bonds, the central bank essentially lends money to the government, allowing it to run a deficit and increase spending on goods and services that its stimulus programs and employment benefits. Yeah. This increases people's income as well as the government's debt. However, it will lower the economy's total debt burden. This is a very risky time. Policy markers need to balance the four ways that debt burdens come down. The deflationary waves need to balance with the inflationary waves in order to maintain stability. If balanced correctly, there can be a beautiful deliberating. If balanced correctly, there can be a beautiful deliberating. You see, a deliberating can be ugly or it can be beautiful. How can I deliberate be beautiful? Deliberating beautiful. I see. I can. How can I deliberating be beautiful? How can I deliberating be beautiful? Even though deliberating is a difficult situations, handling a different situation in the best possible way is beautiful, or rather more beautiful than the David Ford unbalanced excess at the liberalizing pace. In a beautiful deliberating, David decline relative to income. Real economy growth is positive and inflation is the problem. It is. 너는 왜 여기 있냐? It is achieved by having the right balance. The right balance requires a certain mix of cutting spending, reducing debt, transferring wealth and printing money. So what economic and social stability can be maintained? People ask if printing money will raise inflation. It won't if it offers plain credit. Remember, spending is what matters. A dollar of spending paid for with money has the same effect on peace as a dollar of spending paid for with credit. By printing money, the central bank can make up for the difference of credit with an increase in the amount of money. In order to turn things around, the central bank needs to need only form of incoming growth but get at the rate of incoming growth higher than the rate of the interest of the controlled debt. So what do I mean by that? Basically, income needs to grow faster than debit growth. For example, let's assume that a country going to and liberating so debit is income ratio of 100%. That means that the amount of debit it has is the same as the amount of income the entry country makes in years. Now things about the interest rate on that debit. Let's say it's 2%. If debit is growing 2%, if debit is growing 2% because of that interest rate and income is only growing at around 1%, you will never reduce the debit burden. You need to print enough money to get the rate of income grow above the rate of interest. However, printing money could surely be a worst because it's so easy to do and people prefer it to the alternatives. The key is avoid printing too much money in causing unstable high inflation the way Germany did during its liberalizing in the 1926. If policy markers occur in the rising balance or the liberalizing is so dramatic. Growth is slow but debit burdens go down. That's beautiful deliberating. When incomes begin to rise, borrowers begin to appear more creditworthy. And then borrowers appear more creditworthy and thus begin to lend money again. The people finally begin to pay a bill to borrow money. People can spend more. Eventually, the economy begins to grow again, leading to inflation, reflation value of the long-term debit cycle. Though the deliberating process can be horrible if handled badly. If handled well, it will eventually fix the problem. It takes a decade of more for debit or for more debit. I find debit. Okay. Debit cycle on top of the long-term debit cycle and then laying both of them on top of the productivity grow line. Give a reasonably good tempers for things where we've been, where we are now, and where we'll probably have. So, in summary, there are three rules of thumb that I'd like to take away from this. First, don't have debit less faster than income because you debit burdens will eventually cross you. Second, don't have income rise faster than productivity because you eventually become uncompetitive. And thirdly, you do all that you can to raise your productivity because in the long run that's what matters most. This is simple advice for you and it's simple advice for policy makers. You might be surprised, but most people, including most policymakers, don't pay enough attention to this. This template has worked for me and I hope it will work to you. Thank you.